This is Devin with the Cage Rage podcast, and Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Season 3 is underway. We just saw the first event this week of a 10-week series, and it's now on ESPN Plus, formerly on the UFC Fight Pass app. And there was 4 fights. It's usually 5 fights, but this is due to the welterweight bout between Brock Weaver and Leon Shabazian falling out when Shabazian was not medically cleared. So we get a 4-fight card, and we get 2 contracts at the end of the night delved out, and a little bit of controversy that I'm going to explain that a lot of people are talking about. But the evening opened up with a heavyweight clash between Yorgan De Castro and the biggest favorite on the card coming in, a very decorated wrestler named Alton Meeks. And these are big heavyweights, especially Alton Meeks. Came in as a heavy favorite. I think it was like a plus minus 800 favorite or something like that. And didn't really turn out like that. So anybody that put some money on Yorgan De Castro won big for this event. Yorgan De Castro comes in, clearly the better striker, the more complete fighter, really good takedown defense. Alton Meeks was not transitioning well, had little to no striking at all, didn't set up any of his takedowns. Anytime he got his hands on De Castro was able to circle off, stuff the takedown, and landed some seriously heavy kicks. Dropped Meeks by the end of the first round and finished off with some hammer fist on the ground. And later on in the evening, we found out that he earned a contract. The only finish of the night. Very impressive. And I think that he's definitely... I don't think anybody's arguing that if 2 of them were going to get a contract, he should have been one. So very impressive by Yorgan De Castro. He's now 5-0, and I believe he's like 31 years old, I believe. Let me check that for you real quick. I know he's 5-0 now, and yep, 31 years old. As I thought, the second fight of the night is the one that came out with is now we're having a little bit of controversy in the aftermath. It was probably the best fight of the night, and it probably had the best fighter of the event in this fight. And it was between Brendan Loughnane, a fighter out of the UK, highly touted. A lot of Manchester United athletes shouted him out on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. Even Tyson Fury gave him a shout out. He actually formerly fought in the UFC dating back to, I believe, 2010. And he lost that fight, has came back, has a stellar record, 17-3, 29 years old, trains with Dominic Cruz, and he fought back at UFC on FX6 in December of 2012. But he comes into this fight against a tough veteran, puts on a really good fight. He probably had the toughest opponent out of all the ones that won, I would say. And I thought it was a very entertaining fight. He was, I think, clearly the most groomed, experienced, well together, complete fighter, most mature fighter at least, that fought on the night. And he did not end up getting awarded a contract. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in the future, but it's causing a lot of conversation about the criteria of the Contender Series to even get a contract on this card. But the third fight on the night was a women's strawweight bout between Hannah Goldie and Carly Robbins. Goldie, just the more physical fighter, better striker. Robbins couldn't get her to the ground. I think it's a little unfair that they're setting women's strawweights on cards with middleweights and men's featherweights and men's heavyweights, and talking about we want to see killers, we want to see finishes. That's how you're going to get a contract, when the finishing rate is going to obviously be a lot lower at a women's strawweight bout than it is for some of these heavier men's divisions. But nevertheless, it was a good fight. I think Hannah Goldie was impressive. She did not get awarded a contract, but she's now 5-0. I think we can maybe see her in Invicta going forward. I think we might still see her in the UFC in the future, maybe in Bellator. I think that we're going to hear that name again for any hardcore fans that are really wanting to follow women's MMA. And the final fight of the night The main event was between Punahele Soriano and Jamie Pickett. This was a middleweight bout. This was a great fight. Soriano, very aggressive in the first couple rounds. Pickett looked really good, very crisp striking. It was a back and forth battle. Third round comes out, and Soriano really just kind of shuts him down in that round. Wins the decision. He gets granted a contract by Dana White, as well as Jorgen De Castro, and they pass over on Brendan Loughnane. And everybody from Ariel Helwani to Luke Thomas to all these different MMA organizations have been talking about this all week about it, and Helwani's really fired up about it. Loughnane was actually on Helwani's show before the Contender Series fight this Monday, and then the conversation later on in the week on Helwani and ESPN's programming had a lot to do with why they passed over Loughnane. And Dana White seemed to make indication that it had to do with Loughnane going for a takedown with 10 seconds left in the fight, and that he didn't really go for the finish, which I just saw it as good fight IQ. I thought that he was the best fighter on the card. I guess he didn't come out and really push the finish as much as the other two. One got the finish, but I guess not as much as Soriano, which, I mean, whatever. Like I said, I believe that Loughnane had the toughest fight of the night, toughest competitor. I thought it was a really good fight. And the toughest competitor part, I will retract maybe. Jamie Pickett, that Soriano fought, was a really good fighter too. So that's debatable, but it was a good night of fights. I was impressed. I like this format a whole lot better than I do the Ultimate Fighter series. I really wish that they would just I hope they don't resurrect the Ultimate Fighter for another season. They did like 20-some seasons. I do like this format. I wish that they would have some kind of standard than just subjectively Dana White just gets to pick who. I'm going for guys who are going to be a little vulnerable and go for broke, rather than just technical good fighters. I would have been fine with all four of them getting a contract. I think all four of the winners that fought on this card were all very talented fighters that could be potential ranked opponents in their divisions in the UFC. I think they all have a lot of potential. I think that there's going to be times, obviously, and there has been in the past, where winners don't deserve a contract. But in this case, I could have seen Dana handing all four of them a contract, and I think that would have been appropriate. But the big robbery on the night was Brendan Loughnane definitely not getting a contract into the UFC when he's definitely a UFC caliber opponent. But Soriano and De Castro definitely deserved it as well. It was a good night of fights. These are going to be every Tuesday night on ESPN Plus. 5 fight cards, 10 weeks of season 3. We got 9 more to go. Stay tuned to the Dana White Contender Series. There's been a lot of good talent that has come from it, including people like names like Macy Barber and Johnny Walker, who I think are going to be huge stars in the UFC in 2 or 3 years. So stay tuned to the CRP. More updates coming in the future.